TvGrace presents the inexpressible words of God, the gospel of grace, on the lips of Jesus Christ man. Abba, Father.
Are we all? Ephesians 3 verse 10. This is the mission of the church. The church has a mission. And this is the defined mission of what a church should be. If you visit any church and you are not doing this, then you are not visiting a church, you have been deceived. The mission of the church is what we are going to read now. The apostle says that the manifold wisdom of God might be made known by angels flying. By means of what? In other words, the church is the agency that communicates the manifold what? Wisdom of God. Tell me something. Is there wisdom in telling you that the devil is watching you? Is there wisdom in that you can end up in hell? Is there wisdom that God is walking around with a whip looking to beat you and make your baby boy fall down the stairs and break his head? There is no wisdom where you have to climb up a ladder on your knees so that your body bleeds. Or put a pair of pebbles inside your shoes so you can walk comfortably. The church, the mission of the church, if you are visiting a church, either through the internet or through the television program that is being recorded now, or those of us who are here, if in that church the shepherd keeps scolding, shouting, pastor keeps talking about community problems, or talking about the government or politics, that church is a blind church, it has lost its vision. The vision is to communicate the multiform what? What does multiform mean? The many ways of applying this wisdom to lead you to a prosperous life, to a healthy life, to a right life, to a life of joy is multiform. Give you the hope you are waiting for, that this body will be transformed when this corrupt will put on incorruption. The church is there to communicate things like this, but not to scold or sadden. Not to communicate bad news about coming judgments, that the world is going to explode in pieces, in flames, and that people are going to be dying and drowning. That happens every day over there. For the people that don't have order and don't have a good science in their government, well, that happens. Look how the news are, how they are. But the church is not to be talking about that. That's what CNN is for. ABC, channel 23, 53, 41, 2, 4, 6. But the church, we have to be clear that when we come to church, it is to talk about the manifold wisdom of God. And that manifold wisdom, you must have the eyes of the understanding well enlightened. Say with me, my eyes are enlightened and will be more enlightened, so that I can take advantage of the manifold wisdom of God. That multiform wisdom says, look where that happens. By the church. To whom? To the principalities and powers in the heavenly places. I repeat it again. If it says heavenly places, it is talking about places in heaven. It is not talking about heaven, but places in heaven. Heaven has many places. And part of those heavenly places is where the church is. And if it is called a church, it has hair, body, features. And if wisdom is made known, there must be someone to teach it. There must be a mouth to speak. Means that heavenly places are in where? Here. And here are what? The principalities and powers. Yes, because what happens is that when people read principalities and powers, they think of an agency of demons. As well as Star Wars, the film with some laser beams that are pointing at you. When talking about principalities and powers, people imagine a Dracula movie or a Friday the 13th movie. They imagine creepy things, don't they? That people think that because it says principalities and powers. There are principalities and powers. Good, and there are principalities and powers of evil, bad. But they are people. They are people with body. Here, everything God does is here on earth. You can't imagine anything up there. Up there is paradise, nothing else. And do you know who are out of our reach? Those who have died, who are elect, who Paul says are in the cloud of witnesses, who are a cloud of witnesses, who keep hearing the information. Look, right now they are all excited saying, guys, that convention, I wish I had the body to be at that convention. I imagine Abraham, our great-grandfather, must be saying, I knew this was by faith, this was coming. And I imagine Paul said, hey, I couldn't win even one to grace. But look how Jose Luis is doing it. Hey, there they give news. And you know, it has to be like that. I am sure Paul says, look, he is talking about the manifold wisdom. What I wrote 2,000 years ago, he is repeating it and teaching it. That cloud of witnesses is watching everything that happens here on earth. You do not see that the true identity is spirit. What happens is that they came out of the body. When leaving the body, they are not seen, but they are in the present. He called it the great cloud of witnesses. There is that relative of yours that died. He is there too. The only thing he is learning with me because he did not learn elsewhere. And you are taking the best part because you are learning here. Here so you can reign in life. Then when we talk about principalities and powers, in the heavenly places, we are talking about the mission of the church. What is one of the functions of the church? First letter to the Corinthians, chapter 2, verse 9. First letter to the Corinthians, well, let's start at verse 6 and end at verse 9. Yet we do speak wisdom, about that manifold wisdom. Among those who are what? As they say, if you have not reached maturity, it is not possible to talk to you. You know that your relatives do not understand you because they are not mature. They have not matured. But among those who have reached maturity, you can talk to them. Look here how we talk about this. And we all understand. How many of us understand? Look, so good. Because you have been enlightened. Because the mission of the church was fulfilled in you and continues to be fulfilled in you. It says, and a wisdom not of this age. there is the age to come. And there is this age when the Word of God says this age. They wrote it there because the writers are talking about this age. But the age to come was after the cross. After Christ resurrected, then that age ends. And the new century begins, which is the new age, where there are no demons, where there are no sins, where we do not know anyone according to the flesh, where we can live prosperous lives. Now, the rulers of that age, it says they did not understand. It says, and wisdom not of this age, nor of the rulers of this age who perish. What did the Apostle Paul say about Moses? That it was a covenant what? Perishable. Then it says, the wisdom of those rulers perished. And who were those rulers? The apostles? The Jews, the believers, the synagogues of those days. Those were the rulers. That is why it says, and not the wisdom of this that Moses is teaching. For that one perishes. That was a perishable covenant. We are here, yes? It says this wisdom, look what it is. But we speak God's wisdom in what? The wisdom which has been hidden, that only Paul taught it, which God predestined. For whom? For the predestined? If God predestined you, He must have predestined wisdom for you as well. That which God predestined before the ages, to our glory, which none of the rulers of this what? Say before the cross. That is a code that you have to learn, because if you don't go over it, centuries, and you don't understand. Yes. If you do not understand those little letters, they are the ones that hide the revelation. Because when I spoke of that century, I repeat, it was before the cross, after Christ resurrected, those centuries ended and a new one began. It says, which none of the rulers of this age has understood. For if they had understood it, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. In other words, Paul is speaking of the lives that lived in the age before Christ died. And then Paul identifies them of the rulers of this century, where I am living, because he had not died. But after he died and all those people died, then it already begins. Another century. They remained after Christ died and rose. They were still alive. And then he says like this, he says, but as it is what? Eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor have entered into the heart of man. Are those that God has prepared for whom? And how do you know if you love Him? Because everyone says they love God. Everybody says they love God. But the best way for you to know if you love Him is when you love what He loves, which is this word of grace. If you don't like what I'm talking about tonight, you don't love God, because you do not love what He tells you. You know, there are a lot of people who say, I love God in my own way. Everybody loves, the Indians loved God through, when they did not know, through the sun god, the moon god. Everybody is incurably religious. The human being was born to believe. But the important thing is that you believe the predestined wisdom. That which God revealed. That which eye has not seen nor ear heard. This is a marvelous thing. What happens is that you have been so far away and for so long living. In the secular world, that you find it hard to believe what I can tell you now in the next few minutes. That God is going to take your body and is going to give you a treatment, because He says that after the resurrection you will not die anymore, He says, and you will never die. So if you are not going to die anymore, you better get that body well fixed. Do you know what that means? To live forever? Those are the things that the eye did not see. Look, there are not going to be cemeteries because nobody is going to die. There will be no hospitals because no one will get sick. Or prisons. Look, that's something that eyes, because what your eyes have seen is a disaster. Hey, nor ear heard, nor have entered into but it has entered into my heart. Look at what verse 10 says. It has entered into Paul's heart. What happened is that he could not accomplish anything. Look at what verse 10 says. For God has revealed it to us through the Spirit. For the Spirit searches all things, even the depths of God. And what I'm telling you now has a basis. In fact, I must sit down too, because this I do so very briefly. But the things that are coming are wonderful. They are wonderful. When all the counsel of God is finished, here it comes. And I will be alive to see it. And I believe that everyone here will be alive to see it. That's going to be a wonderful thing. Paul says, but God revealed them to us. What eye has not seen and ear has not heard, He has revealed to me. But what happened was that He was silenced. Who? The religious, Peter, John, all the apostles of Jesus Christ said this message is not appropriate. That's why he said, hey guys, you've all abandoned me. All of them. You know what that's like with a message like that? And they abandoned him because of the influence of Moses, because the influence of the religion of those days was so strong. That Judaism lasted so long, it was so deep, it impacted the community so much. Well, it still hurts you. You still feel that you are a sinner, that God is sending people to hell. What hell? Hell was the crematorium of the city in the times of Jerusalem. So when you read Peter, 1st and 2nd Peter, it says that God took the angels and cast them into hell. To angels? Look at the so-called angels. Now they are getting lost too. Peter is a phenomenon. The damage they have done. Look, the damage, the religious poverty that they sold to you. You are pitiful, my love. You need to be brainwashed. Your brain needs to be washed with a pressure hose. Because of the damage they have done to the world. That's why I look like a rare bird to all these shepherds. And they call me apostate, antichrist, the beast. They have no other way to call me because they are so blinded that when they hear the manifold wisdom of God, they call it evil. The blindness is great. And look, and God needs women with their skirts on and men with their pants on. We don't need religious people here with that feeling that, oh, how nice. No, you have to have more than that. You have to have it well grounded in the Word. No, wait, this is the Word of God. Women who stand up to preach this Word, to teach it, to accomplish something. Men zealous for the Word. if the Lord doesn't come, and you die, let something nice be written about you. Because look, in the cemetery, something happens there every day. Do you know how many funeral homes there are here? Lots of them, American, Cuban, Hispanic, all kinds of things. And all of them are full, and all of them are full of business. And what they do is sell flowers and candles. And then the priest goes to pray for the spirit that is leaving and to see if it passes the test. Or to clean the way. You know how deceitful all these evil and perverse men are. Hey, they don't tell people the truth. And then they buried you there. And everyone who hated you and spoke ill of you that day was speaking well of you. Oh, I loved him very much, really, look. After they kept talking bad about you, now because you are dead, they speak well of you. Oh, and the pastors who used to tell you, you are going to hell. Now when you die in the accident or whatever, they say, this soul that received Christ in 1900 and so. Now he is safe. Now he treated him like a devil while he was in the congregation talking trash about him, and now that he is dying, he comes to speak well of him. They are a bunch of liars. Hopefully they will all shut their mouths. Let them shut up. Don't talk trash anymore. They are to blame for poverty. Look, if you are sending money to your family, you are sending money to their country. Because they are in need. It is the fault of Rome, of those pastors, priests. They are to blame. They are the ones to blame for all the delinquents in the prisons. And then they are going to talk more trash there too, after they put them in jail. Because when a child gets up and you educate him well and tell him who he is, he will never be a delinquent. He can go through situations, but not as a delinquent. He will not end up in jail. That is why we have to reform. We have to tell the principalities and powers the truth of God. We have to tell them. I wish they had told me when I was little everything I am now. And children even more, they have a very good memory. Children learn fast. They have a magnificent intelligence. Imagine my mother saying to me, son, you have to make your first communion. Have you gone to confession? If you do not confess, and you learned about the seasons, the seasons? You know what a waste of time that is to take a child and do that to him. And then showing you images of Satan with a trident, a monster, and Christ on one side on the floor while Satan is standing. Christ is placed all full of thorns, weeping, shedding blood like a weakling. Super weak. But then Satan, they put him with a super trident. And you are taught that as a child. You bring the child to church. And in the Protestant churches, they also have those little squares that present all the believers with a long coat, a beard. They have to have a beard because otherwise they don't qualify, and sandals. So they present that to the children. That's Judaism. So the women dress the way they dress in those areas of Asia. And then that affects the child's mind. It traumatizes him to be Jewish, to learn the law of Moses. Take him out. Don't take him to church. Take them to Disney World. And if you can't take them to the beach, take them anywhere but church. All those children should be taken out of the churches because they will harm them. Communicating to the principalities and powers the manifold wisdom of God. That is what we do. That is the mission of the church. To communicate multiform in many ways. Look, I've been here. How many years have I been here? 17, 18, I forget already. And I teach it one way or another. And after I have been saying it for a year, the Lord comes and tells me, repeat that we have to remember it. Do you know what a tight measure is? You've seen when you take a cup and put flour in it, but you want to put more. How do you do it? You squeeze it. And then it fits a little bit more, doesn't it? Well, that's the word. It takes your mind. Do you know the word? Well, look, now let's go to a tight fit. That's what the Bible called it, a tight measure. For 17, 18 years speaking this word. That it is always in another glory, does not tire. The shepherds have told me, hey, and when you run out of the 14 little books, what are you going to do? Because you know that Paul's books sometimes have only one page. And if you want that, you teach it in 6 months. And then what are you going to talk about? Those 14 books, that is full. Look, that detail I gave you about century and century to come. Look up Hebrews chapter 9 so you can see what happened to the centuries. Hebrews, quickly. I'm already running out of time. That's one of the rudiments. One day it's going to end. Paul was so fanatic that the rudiment was a rudiment. Sorry, that time was a rudiment. That one day he preached, and he had been preaching for so many hours that there was a boy who fell asleep and fell from the 3rd floor. He made them dizzy. Paul made them dizzy. He lasted 3 hours teaching. Imagine that. Verse 26. Say, I am enlightened. I understand what I read. And it doesn't come back empty. It helps me. It says, for then he would have had to suffer many times. Verse 26. To suffer many times. He is speaking here about Christ when he died on the cross. To suffer many times from the beginning of the world. But now, at the end of what? What happened to the ages? When were they consummated? When he died. Then when in Ephesians 6:12 says that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of this world. It was before the cross. And what was left after the cross, which were the apostles and the Jewish teachings that did so much harm, that is why Paul was not believed. Paul left it in writing. He wrote it down, but he didn't win a single one of them. No one. The Growing in Grace ministry has been open for 2,000 years. I started it without a member. In fact, I was the first member. I was the first Christian. After Paul, I was the first one who believed. Hey! The churches were full, but the Growing in Grace ministry did not have a single member. Well, it says that Jesus Christ was growing in grace and in knowledge. So he was the first, the one who incorporated this ministry was him. So it says that the child grew in grace and in knowledge. And what do we do? Growing in grace and in knowledge. Then it says here that in the consummation of the ages, he appeared once for all by the sacrifice of himself. To remove sin, to scare it, to remove it. Will he have removed it? Behold the Lamb of God who what? And when he died, what did he do? He took it away. So what sin is Rome and all those Protestant Pentecostal Baptists talking about? Every Sunday they talk about sin. That is their preaching. Take sin out of their way, and they can't speak a word because they can't preach if they don't have an example. Let me see how everybody comes to the front. I'm going to take them to guilt so they can say that my message was good to help the beloved, because I am an evangelist pastor and my thing is to reach, to win souls for the Lord. Take that away from him. Tell him, look, sin was taken away, and he will tell you how. And evil falls out of it. No, that is the work of the flesh. But for there to be sin, the law of Moses must be present. Because the law, forgive me, sin without the law is dead. So this is the wisdom, the multiform, which must be revealed to them. Those pastors, I tell you one thing, I don't know what God is going to do with them. But I hope that little by little they will be straightened out, fixed, or... Look, I don't know what God is going to do to these people. Or they might as well die. Yes, they are better off dead than alive, because alive they talk. After all, if they are saved, they are going to paradise. They are going to the cloud of witnesses. Let them learn there. Since they do not want to learn here, let them learn there. I mean, the gospel says it says that he perished once to take away sin. So don't call me a sinner. What basis do you use to call someone a sinner? Oh, what happens is that we are used to calling those who misbehave a sinner. Well, that's a custom, that's not biblical evidence, but just because it's an opinion doesn't mean it's true. Misbehaving is one thing and being a sinner is another, because when you talk about sin, you are talking about transgression against God. And transgressions against God are over. He died and made peace with us, by whom we have entrance into this grace in which we stand. So the mission of the church continues. Predestined wisdom must be made known.